I never thought the day would come when my own family would make me feel like a stranger in my home. But it did. It started on a rainy Thursday. I was in the kitchen, making my special cinnamon tea, humming like always. I had just watered the plants and laid out the laundry when my son's wife walked in like she owned the place. She looked at me like I was in her way. "Mom," she said, fake sweet. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands and turned to her with a smile. "Of course, dear." She didn't sit down. That was my first clue something was off. She stood tall, arms crossed, like she was preparing to give a speech. And then she said it. "We've been thinking. It's time you consider moving out." My hands froze. "I beg your pardon?" "The house is too big. You're alone most of the time. You could go stay with Auntie Remy for a while. I've already spoken to her." Spoken to her? She already made arrangements? She didn't ask. She decided. I looked at my son, who was sitting on the sofa with his phone. He didn't even look up, just kept scrolling like this wasn't his problem. I felt my chest tighten. "This is my home," I said quietly. "Your father and I built this place from the ground up. Every corner has a memory." She smiled. "Exactly. And memories fade. The plumbing doesn't work right. The garden is overgrown, and you're always tired." That was her reasoning. That I was too old to live in the house I paid for? Before I could speak, she added, "My parents are flying in next week. We want them to stay in the guest room. You can pack before they arrive." I blinked slowly. I didn't want to cry in front of her. I just nodded, and I left the kitchen. That night I packed my suitcase in silence. One small bag. That's all I took. No goodbye. No hug. No second thoughts. I left my house to stay with my late sister's daughter. She welcomed me with open arms and tears in her eyes, but even as I smiled and settled in, something inside me was burning. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed, not just in her, but in my son. He didn't say a word, not even one. For 2 months I lived quietly. I cooked. I read books. I watched birds outside the window. But every night, I thought about my home, my flowers, my books, my favourite chair by the fireplace. And then one day, I got a call from an old friend, Adiz. We grew up together. She had gone into real estate after her divorce and was now managing properties across the state. She asked casually, "Is your house still in your name?" I said yes. Her tone changed. "I have a client looking for a place in that exact neighbourhood. She's ready to pay cash. Would you consider selling?" "Selling?" I paused. For a moment my chest tightened. I imagined never stepping into my garden again, never sipping tea by the window, never hearing the wind creak through those familiar walls. But then I remembered what happened. I remembered her voice. "You can go stay with your sister." Something clicked inside me. "Yes," I said. "Let's meet." We met at a quiet restaurant the next day. I showed her photos, told her stories. She laughed, cried, and said, "We'll get the paperwork ready." Within 3 weeks, the deal was sealed. And that's when I made a decision. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. So I waited. I waited until her parents were in town. I waited until I heard from a neighbour that they were planning a garden party. A big one, with decorations, music, and guests. That morning, I dressed in my best. A deep green blouse, a black blazer, pearl earrings my husband once gave me. Then I picked up the envelope and called the new owner. "I'd like to deliver the documents myself," I told her. She smiled. "I'd love that." We drove together, me in the front seat, her beside me, calm, confident. When we pulled up to the house, music was playing. Guests were walking around the yard. Her parents were laughing near the porch. I could hear clinking glasses and the smell of barbecue filled the air. It used to be my backyard. Now it was theirs. Or so they thought. I rang the bell. No one answered. I rang again. And then she opened the door. My daughter-in-law, in a bright red dress, smiling wide until she saw me. Her face dropped. Behind her I saw decorations, balloons and people. Her father was holding a plate of grilled meat. Her mother was pouring juice. My son was nowhere in sight. She blinked. "Mom? What are you—" "I'm here to deliver something." I handed her the envelope. She looked down, confused. "This is—" The new owner stepped forward, calmly, kindly. "Ma'am, I'm the new owner of this property. As per the contract, you and your family have 30 days to vacate." Silence. Her mouth opened, then closed again. The envelope trembled in her hand. Someone turned the music down. Her parents stepped closer, confused. "What's going on?" her mother asked. "She sold the house," my daughter-in-law snapped, voice shaking. "She sold it." Her father frowned. "But we're living here." I looked at her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I simply said, "You told me to leave." So I did. And now I'm closing the door behind me. Her face was pale. The guests stared. Someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps more people hear stories like this. And then I turned and walked back to the car. No screaming, no drama. Just peace. The kind of peace you earn after you've been kicked out of your own home and still walk away with your head high. And behind me, all I could hear was silence. Not the good kind, the heavy kind. The kind that comes when truth walks through the front door. The silence after I left that day wasn't just awkward, it was deafening. And the next morning it broke. With a phone call. It was my son. I hadn't heard his voice in 2 months. The screen lit up with his name. Daniel. My heart skipped. I almost didn't answer. But I did. "Hello?" "Mom," he said. His voice was tight, low. "Why did you sell the house?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "Are you okay?" Just, "Why did you sell the house?" I breathed in deeply. Because I still could. A pause. Then louder. "Do you know what you've done? Her parents are still here. We're in the middle of everything. The house wasn't yours alone." That part made me smile a little. "Actually," I said calmly, "your father and I bought that house together. When he died, the title passed to me. Legally, I had full control. You would have known that, if you'd bothered to ask." There was silence on the other end. I continued. "You sat there, Daniel. You let her throw me out like a stray dog. You said nothing. Now I've said something. With papers." "You embarrassed us," he shouted. "In front of everyone." "No, Daniel, you embarrassed me, in front of yourself." And I hung up. I didn't block him. I didn't text him back. I just sat in my chair, staring out the window, letting the wind wash over my face. I had never felt so hurt and so free. But that wasn't the end. Later that day, my niece, Blessing, walked in holding her phone. "Auntie," she said, "you're trending." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She showed me a post on social media. Someone at the party had filmed the moment I handed the envelope to my daughter-in-law. The clip was less than a minute, but it had already been shared over 80,000 times. The caption read, "Mother-in-law just served them a 30-day eviction notice and walked off like a queen." The comments were on fire. "She's my spirit animal." "Why are people always mistreating elders? She did right." "Petty? No. Powerful." Some people tagged their own family members. Some wrote long stories about similar experiences. Others even asked for my contact. I laughed for the first time in days. But not everyone was happy. That evening she called, her voice was bitter, sharp. "How could you embarrass us like that?" she spat. "You ruined everything. My parents feel humiliated. They're leaving early." I didn't interrupt her. I just let her talk. "And now we have to move. In this market, you don't care about your son at all, do you?" I finally spoke. I cared deeply, but he let me go without blinking. "You think I did this to destroy him? No. I did it to protect myself. You think you're the victim now? After you threw me out of my own home? That house was toxic. No, I said coldly. It became toxic the moment I was treated like a guest. She was quiet. I took a breath. You and your parents planned a party in a house you didn't own. You laughed, poured drinks and danced in rooms that I cleaned, painted and repaired for over 3 decades, all while knowing you kicked out the woman who paid for it all. Tell me, who really humiliated who? The line went dead. She had hung up. I didn't hear from her again that week, but I knew what was happening behind the scenes. The new owner had begun preparations. The agent scheduled the first inspection. I'd already packed and removed the items I still had stored in the attic, old photographs, letters, my wedding veil. I didn't take much, but every item felt like a goodbye. That Saturday I returned quietly. The front door was left open. The house was filled with boxes now. Her parents weren't there. My son wasn't either, only her, sitting on the couch, alone. When she saw me step in with the buyer, she didn't rise. She didn't speak. I walked past her with grace and said softly, "I'll just be 10 minutes." I went to the attic and took the final box. When I came back down, she finally stood up. Her face wasn't angry this time. It was tired. "Why didn't you just tell us you were selling?" she asked quietly. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Because you didn't tell me you were kicking me out," I answered. She swallowed hard. I continued. "I was never against you. I welcomed you into my son's life. I cooked for you, helped you through your pregnancy, even supported your business dreams. All I wanted was a little space in the house I built, and you couldn't give me that." Her eyes were glassy. "Now you're learning," I added, "that homes don't run on power. They run on respect." And then I left. She didn't follow. She didn't speak. She just stood there, arms by her side, watching as I stepped out for the last time. But that wasn't the last chapter, because something unexpected happened the following week. Daniel came to see me. He knocked on the small apartment door, holding his hat in his hands. His face was tired, older somehow. I opened the door slowly. "Mum," he said, "can we talk?" I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit. He stood near the window watching the birds outside. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I should have stopped her that day." "You should have," I agreed. "I thought keeping quiet would keep the peace. But now everything is broken." "No," I said softly. "It was already broken. Silence doesn't keep peace. It just hides the, noise." He turned to me, his eyes full of shame. "Why didn't you tell me you were hurt?" "Because I waited for you to notice." He sank into the chair across from me, his shoulders slumped. "What happens now?" I shrugged. "I move on. You find a new place. Life continues." He rubbed his face. "I don't want things to stay like this." "Then change them," I said. "With your actions, not with apologies." We sat in silence. That was the first real conversation we had in months. And maybe, just maybe, the first honest one in years. The day after Daniel visited me, I sat by the window watching the wind dance with the curtains, thinking about his words. I thought staying quiet would keep the peace. But what peace was there when your silence cuts your own mother out of her home? I didn't cry. Not anymore. Something inside me had changed. I wasn't just hurt now. I was awake. And I was finally starting to live for myself. But life wasn't done testing me. 2 days later, I got a message from an unknown number. "Hello. My name is Amaka. I'm the woman who bought your house. I think we should talk. It's urgent." I called her right away. Her voice was steady but serious. "I think you should know," she began. "There's a problem." "What kind of problem?" "It's not from my end," she said quickly, "but from the couple still inside the house." My chest tightened. She continued, "They're refusing to leave. I gave them the notice, politely, legally, but now they're saying it's a mistake. That you didn't have the right to sell it, they're trying to stall. I took a breath. I'll handle it. Are you sure? Amaka asked gently. I can take legal action. No, I interrupted. Let me speak to them. One last time. I had faced shame in silence, but now I was done playing quiet. I dressed neatly, like always, calm, composed. Then I headed back to that house, my house, knowing this time I wasn't just visiting. I was confronting. When I arrived, Daniel was outside, pacing the yard like a nervous teenager. His hair was messy. There were bags under his eyes. He saw me and ran over. Mom, he said, please, just talk to her. I stared at him. I've talked, Daniel, many times, but your wife never listened. Now you want me to fix what you stood by and let happen. He swallowed. We're desperate. She's not thinking straight. She's blaming me for everything now. Didn't you say she had it all figured out? He didn't respond. I walked past him. The front door was slightly open. I pushed it and stepped in. She was sitting in the living room surrounded by boxes, some open, some half-packed. She looked up at me, eyes wide, as if I was a ghost. You came back? I nodded. Yes, for something you owe me. She blinked. What? Respect. She stood. You already took everything. I smiled sadly. No, my dear. I took back what was mine. There's a difference. She crossed her arms. We have nowhere to go. That was your choice, I said. When you kicked me out without warning, where did you think I would go? She looked away. I stepped closer. Calm, but firm. I offered you love. You repaid me with eviction. I stayed silent. You threw a party. I left peacefully. You mocked me in whispers. I sold the house. Now suddenly, I'm the villain? Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't stop. You want mercy now, after showing me none? She sat down slowly. I continued. Amaka is being generous. She gave you a 30-day window. Don't mistake her kindness for weakness. I'm pregnant, she said suddenly. That stopped me. My breath caught. I looked down at her belly, barely showing. She placed a trembling hand over it. I didn't speak. She whispered. We found out a week after you left. Daniel wanted to tell you, but things got messy. I was frozen. A grandmother. I should have been part of that joy. But instead I was sold lies and silence, and now guilt was being used like a shield. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know, I said gently. For a moment we both sat in silence, the past hanging heavy between us. Then I rose. Take care of the baby, I said. Raise them with kindness, with patience. And please, never treat your elders like baggage again. And with that, I left. This time, I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved. But the story wasn't over, because a week later, I received a knock. Not on my phone, not on a door, but on my heart. Daniel came again. This time, not to argue, not to plead, but to offer something I hadn't expected. He held out a letter. I wrote this for you, he said. I didn't know how else to say what I need to. I opened it and read it slowly. Each word made my hands shake. Dear Mom, I failed you. Not once, but many times. I stood beside the wrong things. I let pride cover your pain. I let fear become my voice. I watched as my wife pushed you out. I didn't speak because I didn't want to fight. But by keeping peace with her, I broke peace with you. And now I see that silence is not neutral. It's a choice. And I chose wrong. I miss your tea. I miss your stories. I miss your voice in this house. I miss you. I don't know how to make it right. But I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying. Tears slid down my face. I folded the paper gently. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Please come back into my life, even if we never live under the same roof again. Don't leave me out of your heart. I reached forward, and for the first time in months, I hugged my son. A deep, trembling hug that said everything words couldn't. He sobbed in my arms like a child. "I'm scared," he whispered. "I don't want to lose you." I pulled back and cupped his face. "Then don't." But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. A week later, the moving truck arrived. Daniel and his wife relocated to a smaller flat on the other side of town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet and humble. Sometimes that's where healing begins. They invited me to dinner once they'd settled. It was a simple meal, jollof rice, chicken, and plantain. But there was something in the air that hadn't been there in months. Warmth. They didn't try to explain away the past. They didn't make excuses. Instead, they made space for me at the table. At the center. Not at the edge. Not as an afterthought. I held her hand that night, my daughter-in-law, and said, "For the sake of this child, we must learn to be family again." She nodded, eyes shining. "I want that. Truly." And for once I believed her. The months that followed were quieter. Not perfect, but peaceful. Daniel and his wife, Amara, had moved into a smaller flat on the other side of town. Their new place wasn't as fancy or spacious, but it had something the old house never did in those final months. Humility. They started calling me again, inviting me for dinner, including me in plans. It felt slow at first, like stepping on fragile glass. But step by step, we were mending broken pieces. Amara's pregnancy grew visible by the week. Her face softened. She no longer wore that look of control and pride. She looked human. And when she asked me, weeks later, if I would go with her for one of her prenatal scans, I nearly broke down. "Are you sure?" I asked gently. She nodded. "I want you there." So I went, and I held her hand as we saw that tiny heart beating on the screen. The doctor smiled and said, "It's strong, healthy." That's when I felt something shift again. Not in the room, but in my heart. Forgiveness isn't just about saying I forgive you. It's about letting the pain stop writing your story. And that day, I let it go. I was still cautious, still guarding my heart. But for the baby's sake, for our family's sake, I was ready to try again. Then came a knock that shattered the calm. It was a Wednesday morning. I was sweeping the front steps of my niece's house when I saw the envelope sticking out of the gate. It had no name, just a plain white envelope. I opened it slowly, thinking it was some flyer or advertisement, but inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, cold, anonymous. "You should know your daughter-in-law is hiding something. What if the baby isn't your son's? Ask her about the messages she deleted. Ask her about the co-worker she saw every Friday for lunch while you were staying with your niece. Don't say I didn't warn you." My hands trembled. I looked around. No one. The street was empty. The letter wasn't signed. No contact. No clue who sent it. My first thought was, throw it away. Don't let old bitterness creep back in. Don't listen to shadows. But something inside me stirred. That quiet voice, Mother's intuition, began whispering. And once that whisper begins, it doesn't stop. I didn't call her right away. I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I watched. I observed. And I noticed something. Every Friday, Amara would go out alone, dressed nicely, always cheerful, saying she had doctor checkups or prenatal yoga. But one day, out of curiosity, I asked Daniel, "How was the checkup today?" He looked confused. "What checkup?" I stayed quiet. He paused. "She told you she had one?" "Yes." He scratched his head. "I thought she was just going out to lunch." That was the moment I knew. Something wasn't right. A few days later, I made a decision I never thought I'd make again. I followed her, not in disguise, not like a spy. I just got on a kiki, waited near her block and watched her leave. She didn't go to a clinic or a yoga studio. She walked into a cafe, and she wasn't alone. A man was already waiting at the table, well-dressed, younger, smiling too widely. She hugged him, not like a friend, but like someone you've missed too much. They sat close, laughed, talked like old lovers. My chest tightened. I didn't cry. I just took a photo from a distance and walked away. My heart sank. Not for me, but for my son. That night I barely slept. I debated telling Daniel, but how do you tell a man something that might break him? I sat in my room, holding my prayer beads, whispering quietly into the night. The next morning, Daniel came to visit. He brought groceries and fruits, smiling. Amara's cravings are crazy now, he joked. Yesterday she wanted ice cubes soaked in lime juice. I smiled faintly. He placed the basket on the table and noticed my face. What's wrong? I hesitated. Daniel, I said slowly, how much do you trust her? He froze, then forced a smile. A lot. I mean, things have been better. She's really trying, Mum. What if she's hiding something? He frowned. What do you mean? I didn't want to destroy his world without proof, so I handed him the photo and watched his face change. His smile faded. His eyes scanned the picture over and over. He recognized the cafe. And the man. His voice cracked. That's her old co-worker. She used to talk about him, said he was like a big brother. I stayed silent. He looked up, eyes moist. You followed her? No, I said quietly. I followed my gut. He nodded slowly, then stood up. I need to go. Days passed. Then a week. I didn't hear from him. I was worried, yes, but I also respected his silence. Until one night he came back, this time not with groceries, but with heavy eyes. He sat down and said, You were right. He told me everything. The messages he saw on her old phone backups, conversations she thought were gone, the lunch meetups, the late-night chats, and the biggest blow. She herself didn't know who the father was. She'd been intimate with both Daniel and the other man around the same time. And now? She was scared the truth would destroy them all. She begged me not to hate her, Daniel said. She said she was confused, that it happened during a rough patch. I whispered, Do you believe her? He shook his head. I don't even know what I believe anymore. We sat in silence for a long time. Then he asked me something I wasn't expecting. Would you still love the baby and if it isn't mine? I looked at him. Then I placed my hand on his shoulder and said, That child didn't choose this chaos. They didn't betray anyone. My love isn't based on DNA. It's based on heart. If you love the child, then I will too. He broke down in tears, and for the first time I saw the little boy I raised, the one who once clung to my hand in a crowded market, the one who once cried when he scraped his knee, now crying because of a pain no plaster could fix. Later that week, they both sat with me. Amara admitted it. No excuses, no fake tears, just the truth. I was scared, she said. I thought I'd ruined everything. You did, Daniel said bluntly. But we're not perfect either. We all make choices. Now we live with them. They agreed to take a test, not to end their family, but to rebuild it, on truth. And when the results came back, they weren't ready. None of us were. The baby wasn't Daniel's. Amara cried in his arms, begged him not to leave. Said she'd raise the baby alone if she had to. But Daniel stayed silent. For hours. Then he said one sentence I'll never forget. I may not be the father, but I'll choose to be the dad. The baby was born on a rainy Tuesday night. I remember because the sky cracked with thunder just as the nurse walked into the waiting room and said, It's a girl. I had never seen Daniel's face look like that before. It wasn't just joy. It was something deeper. Maybe peace. Maybe love with no conditions. We walked into the room together. Amara lay there, exhausted, her eyes swollen with tears, but this time, not from shame or fear. She looked up and whispered, She has your smile. The baby was tiny, wrinkled, wrapped in a yellow blanket. But when I leaned in, I saw it, those same cheekbones Daniel had when he was born. And yet, we all knew. This child wasn't his by blood, but in that moment, it didn't matter. Amara handed her to me with trembling arms. "Would you like to hold her?" she asked softly. I took the baby gently. She didn't cry. She looked at me, those wide eyes blinking like little stars, and suddenly everything that had happened, the eviction, the betrayal, the arguments, the silence, all of it melted. I kissed her forehead. "She's beautiful," I whispered. Daniel sat beside me watching us both, then placed his hand on my shoulder. "We've named her Chioma. God is good, that's what it meant. And maybe, just maybe, he really was." In the weeks after the birth, life began to shift. They moved again, this time into a humble townhouse with space for a crib and a small garden. Amaka, the buyer who now lived in my old home, sent me a photo of her children playing under the mango tree I once planted. She wrote, "Thank you for this home. It has love in every corner." It made me smile. I didn't miss the house anymore, because I realized a house is just a shell. A home is where healing happens. And I had found my home again, not in bricks, but in people. 3 months later, I received another envelope, not from the court, not anonymous. This time from Daniel. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Mum, this is the new deed. We've bought the townhouse in our name, but your name is listed first. This is your home now too, forever. No one will ever kick you out again. Love, Daniel." I held the paper close to my heart and cried. Not because of the house, but because of what it meant. He had learned. He had grown. He had finally found his voice and used it to protect the woman who raised him. One evening, as we sat on the porch with Chioma sleeping peacefully in her crib, Amara turned to me. "I want to tell you something." I looked at her. Her face was calm. "I didn't just get scared when I got pregnant. I was scared long before that. Scared of not being enough, of being judged, of being compared to the perfect image of a wife and daughter-in-law." I stayed quiet. She continued, "When I pushed you out of that house, I was really trying to push out my own fear, but all I did was lose the one person who would have helped me become better." I nodded. "You hurt me deeply, Amara." "I know," she said, eyes full, "but I'm grateful you didn't give up on me." "I almost did," I said honestly. "But Chioma changed everything. She reminded me that even broken stories can bloom again." That night, I sat by the window watching the moon, and I remembered something my husband once told me. Sometimes life will push you out the door, but it's only to make you walk into something greater. I had lost my home and gained a family again. I had been thrown out and came back with dignity. I had been betrayed and still chose to love. And now? Now I was ready to live the rest of my life not as a victim, but as a woman who walked through fire and came out carrying light.